Hi, hello, my name is Mackenzie and I am currently finishing my second year at SAIC. I have had in my Google Drive since 2017 the portfolio that I use to apply to art schools, so I figured now is just as good a time as any to share that. Obviously the work that I made then and the work that I make now are very different, and you can go ahead and critique it, and I cannot give you answers as to why they were like, this is good stuff, let's let her into school. But I'm gonna talk about like my pieces in general, how I organized the portfolio, the tips and advice that I was given, and like what my experience was like applying. And then I hope that that is somewhat helpful for you. So I guess I'm just gonna start with like a little backstory. When I was a senior in high school, I had only taken a few art classes and I didn't get to take any AP art classes. I focused mostly in graphic design, and my senior year was the first time that I like took up painting seriously. I also did not know what a portfolio was or how to make one. I just didn't know what those words meant. I didn't have like a physical portfolio. I didn't have like a notebook or a folder where they were all organized in. I pretty much just wound up using an iPad that I had at the time. This is a new iPad I bought this year, but back then I was still using like a second generation iPad that my brother had given me right before I started high school, and it was running so incredibly slow I could barely use it anymore, but it wound up working really well. So I'll get back to talking about like how an iPad is kind of a good opportunity. When I applied as a senior in 2017, I had just gotten back from living in Mexico for a year, and I didn't go to school or do anything. I just like completely skipped my junior year of high school. So I had to really quickly take my ACT score my sophomore year, and I got a 23, which is like the minimum to like technically pass it. And then when I came back, I just didn't have time to retake it, and I didn't have time to take the SAT. So I was applying to schools with only a 23 ACT score. That was all I had. I didn't want to write any essays, and I didn't honestly want to go to college, but I was like, what do I have to lose? I'm just gonna apply to art schools. Like, if I'm not making art, there isn't anything else in this world that I want to be doing that would make me happy. If all else fails, I'll just go be an au pair in another country. So now is probably as good a time as any just to get into the work. The work that I made back then, like I said, is so much different than what I make now. I don't honestly know why I got accepted or why my situation worked out the way that it did, but I'm very grateful that it did. At the time, like I said, I didn't have a portfolio, like a physical one. I didn't have any binders or things. Like, I had done some like physical paintings, but they were pretty small at the time, and then I got into larger ones later on. So what I did is I scanned any art that I had, and then I took all my digital files, I organized them all, and then I put them all into a folder on my Google Drive, and then I transferred all of that onto my iPad. So I will add in like what this looks like better. That was like how I would go to portfolio reviews, or it's just kind of how I organize my thoughts, because it was really easy to move all the photos around and reorganize them. And when I would like go in to show people them, they could just press and slide. It could pause, they could zoom in. So obviously I'm not telling you that you need an iPad. At the time, I thought that I was doing it like awful, because I went to my first portfolio review and other kids were bringing in like these huge folders, and I was like, oh shit. And I sat down to have the first person review it, and I was like, I'm so sorry, like this is my first time, I didn't know what to do, I just have an iPad. And they were like, that works fine, you can also bring in a laptop. And from that point on, I got a lot of compliments from people that that was a really good way to do it. So if you don't have an iPad, which is understandable, a laptop is also a good. The first piece in here, please bear with me, happens to be from 2015. It's actually the first time that I learned how to do a vector image, and as you're going to find out, I got obsessed with them. I thought in 2015 and 2016, all I was gonna ever want to do in art was digital, and I thought I was only gonna want to do vector images and portraits. These got kind of popular at the time, and I was super into them. So this is the first piece. I started my portfolio off with this one because I kept all the line work in it, and now I hate myself because I can't go back. I only saved it as a JPEG, so I don't have the original Illustrator file to alter and remove the line work. But I wanted to show like how much detail and time I put into the piece, so that's what I started with. And then I moved on to this piece, which is obviously a portrait of Halsey. The first one was Melanie Martinez. In 2015, that was like my life. I still love Halsey, but yeah, so I got really into these. The first one was done on a computer with a mouse, and then from that point on, I started making them on Adobe Illustrator's Adobe Draw app on the iPad, and I didn't have a stylus, so I would do them with my finger. I got obsessed. I would spend like hours making these. So I added these next few to my portfolio. This one, this Halsey one, it was based on a portrait of her. I entered it in quite a few competitions and it won first place in all of them. But one of the problems I ran into with a lot of these pieces, except for my later on ones, was that if I'm doing work of a celebrity and I didn't take the photograph myself, then you have copyright issues you're gonna come into, even in high school and especially as you get older. So that's something to take into consideration, and part of why I've started doing more photography work, so I have all the rights. This piece, however, was also done on a computer. This took 9 hours. I sat and I drew with a trackpad for 9 hours in the dark. I also kept the line work on this one, but not because I was trying to show like how much time it took. It was more of, that's just the style I started to move into. I liked like decorating and kind of adding like accentuations around the face. And then this is another one that I did on an iPad. At the time, this was a friend I had, so I started taking portraits and pictures of people I knew, and I kind of like doing these just to like make other people feel good. So from this point on though, this next piece, I have them in order because when I went to my first review, they noticed that I had them in this order and they complimented it, and I wound up keeping them because coincidentally I just made a good choice. But I now know that one of the important things is like having a flow throughout your portfolio. So this piece and then this next one are next to each other because I'm going from 2 different types of work, both digital, but I'm going from like digital painting to photography. They just both happen to be pieces that have a lot of green tones to them and green coloring. So it makes it not such a drastic jump when you're switching in your portfolio. This is a photo I took while I lived in Mexico. That's actually when I got like into photography. So I like specifically remember the first time that I had my portfolio reviewed, and the woman who was looking at it was like, "Did you take this photo?" And I was like, yeah, that's why it's in my portfolio. And she was like, "This is incredible, and this is a great point to like have an image like that." So as I hope you notice, one of the important things to do when you have a portfolio is to start with like a really good piece. Like start with your best work. I didn't necessarily start with like my very favorite piece, but I started with a piece that like I thought showcased my work the best because it showed my progress and my detail orientation, which is a big thing for me, and just how much time I put into things that I feel like really passionate about. And then it's also important that while you continue going along, you have pieces that sort of break it up and keep people hooked, because you don't want them just being like, okay. What happened with this photo is that the person reviewing my portfolio stopped and was like, okay, and then you keep going and you're starting to lose interest again, and then you get them with another really good piece. So the next one that I had after the waterfall was another picture from Mexico. This is a tree that was in my host mom's dance academy. That's like a weird backstory you probably don't care about. I just thought it was beautiful. Once again, another green photograph. I took hundreds of photos while in Mexico, and I lived there for a year, so obviously, but this was just one that I felt like fit the portfolio well. I liked the energy of it. Also, I think it's really important that I mention all my photos at this time, all the photos that are in this portfolio were taken on an iPhone 6. They're not like the highest of quality, and now when I have photos that were taken on a phone, which is totally valid because phones have incredible capabilities, and it's just kind of like what's ready with you in the moment to take something. I do like put in the description, or I give a, what's it called? I give like a disclosure to people when I'm presenting like my portfolio or work for a job or something, and I'm like, hey, this photo was taken on a phone, and I'm very aware of the fact that it's automatically a JPEG then, unless you take a RAW in Lightroom, that's a whole other thing. And that the photo is also like 72 DPI. It only looks good on a small screen. It's not gonna look good blown up. It's not gonna look good in a big print. I'm very aware, it's just what I had with me at the time. Done, that's enough for them. Like the people that reviewed my portfolio were like, that's great. that's good to know. It's great that you're aware of that, but it's also like important to know that like in the moment, if you want to capture something, you should just be taking advantage of that and not tearing yourself down because you don't have the best colored pencils or the best paints. It's just kind of like what you have with you. Okay, so this next one is Chichen Itza, also from when I was on exchange, and it's not the best photo. I took several photos while I was there. This was just the one that I liked the best because it's like dark on one side and it's light on the other, and when I was thinking about it in my portfolio, it hits the middle mark. This is my 7th photo, so this is the photo that's in the middle of my portfolio. We've gone halfway, we've got halfway to go. And I like the way that it was kind of split down the middle with half dark and half light. I really like the pink tones, and I just felt like it was a good way to break things up because I just had a bunch of green, a bunch of digital art, and now it's getting kind of more serious. This photo is from the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. I was on a field trip. This is also taken on a phone. This is taken on a Samsung. Like, it's an old photo, and it was taken on an old digital like phone, so it's not great. But ways I save the photo. When you have a low quality photo, you can make it black and white. I'm not gonna say that's gonna save every photo. You can't just always take bad photos and make them black and white. That's not how it works, and I don't want to discredit black and white photos. But it worked really well. It also changes the tone of a photo a lot, and so this one became like a lot more dramatic, and they really loved it. It got great reviews in my portfolio reviews, and it changes the tone because I have this photo moving into my last like digital works that are really in here. This piece is based on a project I was given my sophomore year of high school. Like I said, some of these pieces are all the way from back in 2015, and I am very aware that I applied to school in 2017 and it's currently 2020, so a lot of these are like outdated. They're really old styles for me, and the topics are kind of old too. But this was a tattoo style based on the trash polka contemporary style. It's like a German style of doing tattoos. You can look it up on Pinterest. I can put information down below. It was just a project I was given, and I do a lot of my work based on musicians and music because that's the kind of industry I want to go into. So I find a lot of inspiration by being able to make work based on songs or like concept albums and stuff. So this particular one is based on Halsey's song Gasoline. This was another one of those pieces where it did really great in art shows, but I wasn't allowed to get like the scholarship money or prizes a lot of the time because it had copyright issues. I don't technically own the image that is used in it. There's a black and white photo that I have imprinted in, and then the rest is like digital collage. But because I don't own that one image that is in this, I fell into a lot of like issues with that. Now we get into more of like the graphic design. So the way I had like broken this up, we've gone through a bunch of like digital art, which is like my main focus. That's what I started with. That's a really good thing to do, is to start with like what you're focused on, but then you start to show your other capabilities. So SAIC is one of those schools that'll offer you like online courses or reviews. So if you're looking to go to a certain college, they often have like online like hour-long kind of lectures, almost like TED Talks that you can tune into, and they'll give you advice. I did not watch any of them. But they did have one that I caught like 20 minutes of, and what I heard was it's really important that you show progress work. It's really important to show whips, like works in progress, or just in general like how you think about your art and how you make it. Before I heard that, I didn't intentionally like document my work, or I didn't think about like the progress or the things that I was doing step by step before the final piece. And I just was fortunate enough that my professor that year for graphic design had given us a project, and he wanted us to take step by step a breakdown of how we designed this logo and how we worked on it, and then to document it. So I had that, and that's what I put in my portfolio. And now it's just something that I keep in general, and I keep for my portfolio as a practice, especially when I continue to do more logo work, because I'll do commission logo work. So this is the first and then the second part. It was like one long image, but it's easier to break it up here, and it just shows like a breakdown of like how I started with the logo, how it changed, how it manipulated more, and then this is the final piece. Like, this is what the final proposal was. Basically, the assignment was to come up with a design for like a new sports brand, and we were given like random things that you had to use. So I was given an ostrich, and I had to use like varsity letters and stuff. This was just the first time I did a breakdown of a project this way, and it was very helpful, and I would highly recommend, even if you like graphic design isn't what you do, if you do a painting or if you do a sculpture or anything, like sketch it out first, do a second version of like when you changed your mind, and then do recordings or like clip its. You can do videos in your portfolio, I just didn't have any, and showcase like how you worked through that particular project that you were working on, because that's gonna make a big difference. They wanna just see like how your mind is working. It probably sounds a little creepy, but it's just the truth. They want to get like how you think creatively as an artist, and a big thing that you're going to be doing in school is talking about that and learning about it more. Now we have two pieces that I'm not a fan of anymore. This is my first watercolor painting. I had obviously messed around with watercolors before. You like get a gift tray of watercolors and you paint a little. This was the first time I had like been sat down to do it properly. Like I said, I didn't officially take a painting class until my senior year of high school. These were just the two paintings that I had done in time to submit them for my portfolio. And then this is acrylic. It's actually no, sorry. It's tempera painting. The like cheapest and worst paint you could possibly get, but it was a way of like my professor teaching us how to work with really terrible products, and just in general learning to control and work with the paint on your own behalf. So both of those happened to be paintings of glass bottles. That was just the subject material that I chose, so they kind of fit well into my portfolio. And I would recommend that if you do painting, while it's important to show like your versatility and different things that you can paint, also consider being like, this is a main focus, these are things I tend to paint, and highlighting that in your portfolio. Lastly, this is my final piece. So I did those two paintings. I really wanted to include those. I did that because I was told it's important for my portfolio where I was applying to show what I'm capable of and the different things that I'm interested in. But I finished, like I said, on a really strong piece, and this is like my favorite piece. This is a photo of Halsey. It's 3 photos superimposed next to each other through Photoshop. I painted it on Adobe Draw once again. I did it all with my finger. It took several hours on an iPad. This is quite possibly the last portrait that I did on that iPad before I sold it. It was so old, it wasn't running anymore. And then I didn't have an iPad for 2 years until I bought my new one. So this piece means a lot to me. I just like how it turned out. I have used it for quite a few things. My sophomore year I made this piece, and my teacher asked if he could enter it in, and I said yeah, of course. And I won first place for like the entire school for the whole art gallery, and I won like second place at state, and it did really well. I made this my ending piece because it wasn't my start and it didn't fit anywhere else, but you're supposed to leave with like a bang. You need to end on a really good piece so that they remember your work. Like, yeah, I'm gonna remember that person. The person who reviewed my portfolio the very first time, all those pieces that like I highlighted, those are the ones where she was like, I'm going to remember those. I remember them distinctly now after we've looked at all of these. And this is still a piece that I keep in like my current portfolio and I will use quite frequently, just because, I don't know, it's aged really well. I've been talking for a very long time now, so I'm just gonna get into like my basic final points and a little bit like about how my application story went. I already covered like my backstory and the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing when I was applying, and I was just shooting my shot for the hell of it. I didn't sincerely think I would get into any school. I didn't think I wanted to go to school anymore, and I don't know, I was really lost at that time. I was so done with trying, but I put together this portfolio and I was like, I really need to have this looked at before I submit my portfolio. Typically, portfolio applications are due like November 15th, and I think about that time, or like October 15th is when we usually have like National Portfolio Day. I would highly recommend going to that. What I went to first was like September 9th or something of 2017, and it was like a small portfolio review that was hosted by SAIC. A lot of schools will do these. I went to the one that was hosted at Cantini Gardens. There wasn't too many people. You had to RSVP to it. Basically, you start getting emails like your junior year, your sophomore year of colleges that are like, hey, you should come apply and you should come study here, and you should also look into those schools and then like sign up for their email newsletters and say, hey, I'm interested in possibly applying, and then they'll start sending you information about like being an incoming freshman and how their application process works. So that's basically what I did, and that's how I got the email about all these invites to watch these like TED Talk kind of videos, and then that's also how I got the link to invite an RSVP to like these portfolio reviews and how I knew about what day that the National Art Portfolio Review would be on. So I got the email, I RSVP'd, I went to Cantini Gardens, and I waited my turn. They did like a presentation, and they talked about like what they look for when they're accepting students, what the school is like, and then you signed up for a slot, and each person got to go and sit at a table and have their portfolio reviewed one-on-one. There was probably like 5 tables. There wasn't like 100 kids even, so it didn't take too long. And when I got up there, I was so anxious because I was like, I only have an iPad. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I need to have. And like I said, the lady was like, this works just fine, nobody cares. So we go through the portfolio. A lot of what I told you about when I was showing you my pieces were the comments that she gave me. And with this particular situation, this is my first time ever having my portfolio looked at. She's got like a little sheet out where she's writing notes, and it's one of those papers that has like 3 layers. So it has like a white, a yellow, and a pink sheet, and when you write on one, it writes on all the other ones and you can pull them off. So that way she had one to keep for herself, one to give to me, and one to give to the school, because she was from like the academic and acceptance counselors. She writes out these reviews. She tells me about artists she recommends that I look at, basic tips that I'm sharing with you about like what you should do for my portfolio and how to fix it. And then at the very bottom, she signs it and writes this little note down, and she was like, so I'm putting it in, but basically all you have to do is apply. You're going to be accepted. We just need you to submit your ACT score, and you've already told me that you have a 23, which is like what we need to accept you. You just need a 23 in English. So as long as you apply, you'll be accepted. She also recommended that I do the early application, because unless you have like a really big piece of work that you know you're gonna need more time on, and you're like, I really need to finish this and I really need to put this in my piece, this is so strong, then you should do the early application. I recommend doing early application. So I was like, I don't have any pieces I'm like super stoked about, and I'm gonna wait 3 more months to apply for. Typically, early application is like November 15th, and then the deadline for the regular is like January 15th. I did the November 15th one, and then that way by like January, you've already got your acceptance letter and your financial aid packet that they'd be offering you. If you wait till January, then you may not get that information until March. And if you wait till January, what they'll tell you is that you're gonna get less money, because basically with a pie chart, I will make one and I'll put it right here. They give the majority of money that they've saved as scholarships and such to the people who apply early. And if you're one of the people who applies at the regular date, then there's only so much money left for them to give to you. The problem that I saw a lot of people run into was that they did the regular application and they really did get less scholarship money. And I got a very large merit scholarship. Like 80% of my tuition is paid for by my scholarships. So she pretty much was like, you just have to apply, you'll be accepted. We only do this with like 5 people a year. I have only met one other person who has had this same situation happen to them, and I got this little like pink slip to take with me and a little envelope. I got in the car and I cried. So I went home, I finished that application, I tuned up my portfolio based on what she said, and I just submitted that one for SAIC. I also submitted pretty much the same portfolio that I showed you, but like tweaked a little bit for College of Creative Studies in Detroit, RISD in Rhode Island, Pratt in New York, Parsons in New York. I also applied to PCA, which is Paris College of Art. I was heart set on going to Paris to study art at the time. And this is the other like example I'm going to talk about now. So basically, I only went to National Portfolio Day because I had already been reviewed by SAIC, and I wasn't really interested in going to Pratt or Parsons or RISD or like all the other tables. I stood in line, and all the tables are pretty close to each other, and they're put in different locations. Most of them, even if it's not the school you want to go to, will host the portfolio day there, and you can go and then you'll see representatives from the other schools. And so I listened to the reviews of other schools that were near me while I was waiting in line for Paris. I waited in line for 2 hours. I had my portfolio reviewed. He said it looked great, that they were really looking for my work, that they don't typically do a lot of digital art. So that was like a downside for me, because that's what I want to bring all my focus into, but that he did really like my digital painting, and they really liked my painting in general, and they'd love to see me experiment with that more. I got like a little tote bag and a little envelope in a folder, and he was like, please reach out, write your name down, we're going to reach out to you again soon. And then like a week later, I got an email from a counselor who wanted to FaceTime me or like Skype call, and we had a Skype call interview for an hour. She just asked like basic questions about like why I wanted to go to school, what I was interested in, what I had been doing with my life this last year or two. And then she scheduled to come visit me. So I was living suburbs of Chicago, like a little bit away, and she flew from Paris to Chicago so that we could have a meeting in a coffee shop one night after class. I came down to the city and we sat and talked for like 2 hours about what my options would be. They said that they could match the financial aid packet that SAIC had offered me, and if I couldn't afford it now, then I had the option to do 2 years at SAIC and transfer all those credits to PCA and they would accept them, or I was more than welcome to do a transfer or to do like a study abroad semester there. And the whole reason for that is because if you want to study art at school outside the States and you're from the States, then there's not going to be a dorm. You can't take your FAFSA. You're going to have to get private loans, and you have like all the issues of trying to get a job on a J-14 student visa or trying to get a new phone, a new bank account, like all of that. It's a whole mess. Moving everything or like buying all new. Just like I didn't have a security net or the money to be able to do that. I didn't even have the money to go to college in the first place. So they like cut me a deal and they kept in contact with me, and I still get emails quite regularly, but I'm not currently planning on transferring anymore. 2 years ago, I wanted to be in Paris so bad, and now after coming to SAIC and like living in the city here, I really can't imagine going to school elsewhere. I got in everywhere I applied, which was like the craziest reality check. I don't know why. Like, you just saw my portfolio. I could not tell you why that it did that well. I think I make way better work now. Not to toot my own horn, but I think I've improved greatly in the last 2 years, that I would see myself getting accepted now, but I don't know how the work that I was making 2015 through 2017 is what got me into some of those schools. I think that's really the majority of my advice. You should apply early. You should make sure that your portfolio shows versatility and what you're capable of, that you enjoy experimenting, especially if you're applying to SAIC. They're an interdisciplinary school, and they don't want to see a portfolio that's all portraits or that's all charcoal or anything like that. That was the comments that I kept hearing when other people were reviewed. If you're really good at something, showcase it, but also show them that you like trying other things. I know some schools are completely different. Like when I applied to Columbia and I got the Dean's Scholarship, you have to like specifically apply and give only things in your portfolio that are for the degree that you're looking for. So if you want to do film or if you want to do graphic design, then your portfolio needs to entirely be graphic design. I would just suggest that even if that is the case, that you show like versatility with your graphic design. Like, it's so important to show them that you're adaptable and that you're incredibly creative and you can come up with new ideas, and that you can work outside the box even when you're confined to such a small and specific thing. Yeah, and I think that's really most of it. If you have any questions, you can feel free to leave them in the comments. That way other people can see the answers that I give, and I will try my best to give an answer. I know that I applied 2 years ago, so it may be a bit different this year. When I applied, I was told that was the largest class that they've ever had for applications, and that it was very hard to make the decision on who to choose, but I know that that's a continuing issue, that like fortunately more people want to go to art school now because it is such a necessary degree and like important thing to have in the world. But with the influx of people that are applying, it makes it harder to get in. So you've got to try really hard to have a unique and a creative portfolio. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.